FPS is the acronym for first person shooter, a genre of games where you play as the character quite literally. And possibly the most influential first-person shooter is Quake, a game all about gothic architecture, gore and momentum. It is one of the oldest shooters, yet with its simple formula and devoted fanbase, it is still the hardest shooter to master, and the ones who do master Quake create quite a unique picture. Where in other esports titles the retirement age hovers around 25, in Quake, ages of the highest level players hover around 30. For example, the world champion of this year's QuakeCon Duel tournament was a 31-year-old Rafa, where he won against 25-year-old Razy. When we compare that to the last CSGO Majors final, where Astralis with an average age of 23.8 won against Avantgarde with their average age of 22, the difference is obvious. Rafa is not a rare enigma either. When you look at every player participating in Quake Pro League right now, you see an average age of 28.8. So how does this game of pure speed and snappy reflexes have such an older professional player base? The amount of competition is an important factor here. Quake and arena shooters in general require you to learn a lot to compete in them. So new players usually get discouraged by the mountain of information that is thrown at them. If you are a new Quake player, the most basic mechanics of the game are pretty straightforward. Yet they go deeper than most other games do. Shooting is simple. Hits are distinct. What is hitscan and what is projectile based is pretty obvious, yet knowing how to combine these guns and where and how to use them is a tricky part that one needs to learn. Like shooting mechanics, movement is simple, but there are a lot of tech that you can learn and use, but don't need to compete. But even when you understand and get pretty decent with the core mechanics of the game, when you try jumping into a competitive match, you'll get dunked on by Rod. Rod is a 35-year-old dad of two, who drives a Subaru Forester to the agency they work at as an IT manager. He has grown up playing Quake and Unreal Tournament, so he knows the maps like the back of his hand. With his cold cider on the desk, he moves around the map with efficiency that was previously unknown to you. You didn't know one could take heavy armor railgun and lightning gun mere seconds after the match started. For the next 4 minutes, Rod destroys the ever-living crap out of you, until you type GG and disconnect. Rod is not a rarity in the Quake community. Just like the pros, the casual community is pretty older and smaller compared to the wider FPS scene. The younger generation of players are not interested in arena shooters simply because of this learning vault they need to climb over. Even when a person is interested in playing arena shooters and they are crazy gifted mechanically, firstly they still have to understand that each and every gun in their arsenal have a specific place in the moment-to-moment combat, and they're all used in different ways. Whether you are denying your opponent from a major pickup with your grenade launcher or getting in their face with your shotgun, which is not a common thing with most other popular games that are on the market right now. The closest game that has a similar weapon hierarchy is, ironically, one of the most popular shooters among the kids, Fortnite. Most other games just have guns that shoot faster, guns that shoot further, and guns that shoot 12-gauge bullets. Also, on top of the guns, they need to learn the maps and the pickups on these maps. There are around 10 maps that you need to learn to play on ranked modes for Quake champions. Every single one of these maps have around 30 pickups that you need to play around, all providing unique moment-to-moment decisions. Knowing the pickups and the maps is not just a case of advantage, but a necessity to compete. The spawns, rotations, pickups are such integral parts of the metagame, playing without their knowledge is almost impossible against the seasoned community. After learning what is where and where they need to go for something they need, a new player also needs to learn to time pickups both they and their opponents take. This means to have an internal clock that constantly follows the information the player has to keep track of the time between pickups opponents. They need to be able to know which pickups are on cooldown, which are available, and which their opponent might be moving towards to make decisions and predictions to be able to consistently win against players who are as skilled as they are mechanically. Then there are heroes on Quake champions that add another layer of depth. How fast your opponent or you can move from one place to another varies greatly between champions. Their starting stack, the damage they can take, what they can do in a duel, all vary greatly between all the champions. Keep in mind that all I've been talking about is only for the duel mode, where two players kill each other for 10 minutes. I didn't even talk about the team-based game modes. Team Deathmatch, Capture the Flag, Freeze-Tag, Sacrifice, MacGuffin. On top of the basic formula, these game modes had objectives that require not only you playing at the top of your game, but your teammates being able to keep up. Unlike any other FPS subgenre, arena shooters require the player to understand a huge portion of the metagame, even at the lowest level. The metagame surrounding Counter-Strike also goes deep when you look at the pro scene, yet a newcomer can jump into a competitive match and understand the concept and what they need to do to win in a couple of rounds. Same with Battle Royales. All the newbie needs to understand is don't die. All you need to know to enjoy some paladins is the fact that there's an objective you must complete, and the game constantly reminds you of that. In arena FPS games, however, that is far from the truth. Even the simplest sounding game modes end up being crushing for a new player. When a new player jumps into a team deathmatch, they are faced with skinny ladies and huge reptiles jumping around the speed of the sound, blasting each other with rockets. And I think this is the biggest reason why arena FPS games, as satisfying and as deep as they are not popular games. They are not just FPS games, they are much more than that, and in a way this makes them stray further from being a multiplayer first-person shooter. The depths their metagame reaches makes these games less about shooting. And that is how, even at their age, players like Toxic can play against players like Wenger, who have been on this planet as long as they have been playing Quake. So I just finished editing this video and I realized I didn't mention a couple of things. Recently an indie arena FPS game came out named Diabotical on Epic Store. So Diabotical is made by a couple of dudes who are really frustrated with how ID Software and Bethesda treated Quake and Quake Champions, and how they just fucked it up. Like, even though I make it seem as this is people don't want to play Quake, the reason they're not as popular as they could be is also heavily on ID Software and Bethesda, because they didn't bother with making this game what it could be. Outside of pro matches, Quake Champions is a boring ass game. There isn't much to do. They have recently added, I'm not even sure if it's recently or not, they've recently added seasons and battle passes. I now have all of the characters and I still just don't even play the game that much. I just play a couple of duels, maybe play an insta-give game. So Diabotical is made by people who were like me, frustrated with Quake Champions, but who also knew how to make games. So they decided to make an arena FPS game that ticks all the boxes: customization, community, balance, map design. Diabotical is a really great game that, unlike Quake and many other arena FPS games, teaches you how to play the game and lets you practice in different game modes. However, I didn't really enjoy the aesthetic because the egg bots, to me, look weird as hell, and it's such a superficial thing to be mad about in a fucking arena FPS game, but I just don't like the art design. So even though it's fun as hell and it's quite literally the best arena FPS game so far out there, I just don't play it. But if you're interested in arena FPS games, I would highly, not recognize, not advise, suggest. I would highly suggest you check out Diabotical. It's a great game, and it teaches you how to play arena FPS games, which is something that most other games don't do. So, thanks for watching. See you next week, hopefully. I'm not sure. Bye. Bye. Goodbye. Goodbye, dude. Am I not on the frame yet? The spawns, rotations, and pickups are such integral parts of the metagame. Playing without their knowledge is almost impossible against a well-seasoned community. Well-seasoned community. Quake community is a beef now.